Good evening, afternoon. This is a pretty big room. They didn't always used to be this big. Used to be when I do a seminar, I had to buy you dinner first. In fact, this is my 25th year in the Villages and 28 years in business. And I've always done, up until a few years back, I always did these free dinner seminars, so I could meet new people. And when I moved to Florida in 2000, I said, I'm going to keep doing it. These free dinners are working. Prior to that, they were working pretty good. But they, in Florida, seem to work better, I mean, I'm originally from Maine. They worked okay, but when I moved to Florida, they started working better. And what I do is I had a learning center, a tiny little learning center, hold 40 people or so, and we'd fill it up pretty often. But what we'd do is we would offer a steak and lobster. And so what I used to do is I'd send out mailers, and I would invite people to come and listen to me talk about the things I knew about retirement. And then I would serve you a steak and lobster. And at first it was awesome because, half the room come to hear me speak, and half the room came for the steak and lobster. But that was just like the cost of doing business, and we did very, very well. And then word got out that you could get steak and lobster, and like 2/3 of the room would come for the steak and lobster, and only 1/3 of the room would come to hear what I had to say. And then eventually, after time, we had to stop doing the food altogether because we noticed that people were starting to forget their names. It's true. People would come, and they'd come on Tuesday, and they'd check in under Kathy Clark. They'd come back on Thursday, they'd check in under a totally different name. They didn't think that I noticed people were coming just for the food. So we had to stop with the free food. I said, I'll never do free food again. So after tonight's presentation, we do have some food and refreshments, and Jim Summers will collect your payment on the way out. And then next week, I'm going to do a follow-up workshop, classroom style, at our Learning Lounge at Colony. And I'm going to do case studies, and I'm going to apply the principles that I'm going to talk about tonight to practical, real-life examples so you can see how it works and teach you a little bit more detail about who we are and what we do. But I'm going to try to cover a lot tonight. First, I think you need to know who you're listening to, and as long as you can. My name is Greg Parody, and I started in the insurance business in 1996 when I was 22 years old. And I started for this insurance company and did exceptionally well right away. And it wasn't anything magical. I just did what they asked me to do. And I just was good at it. I loved it. I enjoyed it. And I couldn't figure out for a while why I enjoyed it so much. But I did. I enjoyed helping people. I worked for a company that specialized in working with retirees. And everybody I talked to was worried about money. Everybody I talked to was worried about health. And they're all worried about taxes. But they're mostly worried about money and worried about health. You're going back to the mid-90s. And I didn't figure it out until many years later, but one of the reasons why I did so well, I think, was because I could relate to so many of the people I was talking to. You see, when I was 12 years old, I'm the oldest of 5 kids, by the way, when I was 12 years old, my father had his first heart attack. And when I was 14 years old, he had his second heart attack. And when I was 18 years old, he had his third heart attack. He was self-employed. And every time he got sick, he missed work. And every time he missed work, there was no paychecks. And when you're 12 years old, it's hard enough to get your head wrapped around even understanding what a heart attack is, because, that's a pretty serious thing in 1986, as it is today. But every time he'd get sick and miss work, we were just constantly worried about his health and constantly worried about money and constantly worried about, everything. It's almost like constant anxiety in your body growing up, the oldest of 5 kids. I mean, my youngest sisters were both 1 year old. I have twin sisters that were 1 year old when my dad had his first heart attack. And so, You know, I grew up worrying about the same things that everybody I was talking to was worried about. Everybody's generally worried about their health. They're generally worried a little bit about money, and I'm worried. There are different scales of worry, concerned. And everybody that I talked to wanted to feel secure, which is all I had ever really wanted to feel, is financially secure and be healthy. And I think when you grow up under those types of circumstances, along with a few other challenges that I had growing up, I think you learn to appreciate the value of good health. I think you grow to appreciate the value of time. Time is without a question, I think, our most valuable asset. And almost, it's like a trick, right? Everybody I talked to for 25 years has been telling me, enjoy the years you're in. It doesn't get any better. And then I look at how they're living, and they're not even enjoying their life to the maximum, because it's very hard to do, isn't it? The older you get, the faster it goes by. And so for many years, the first few years of my career, I started with this insurance company in Maine, and I did pretty well. And then in 2000, I moved down here, and I told you the story already. I did the seminars. And then in 2011, finally, I got out of the restaurant business completely, and I started a learning center. I started a learning lounge, and it's at our Colony office. So I started this learning center where I could teach you about who we are and what we do, and teach you about our services. And it was interesting. We didn't fill the room as much, but everybody that came to that room came to learn about the stuff that I know, and they wanted to learn about retirement strategies. They weren't there for food because we weren't advertising steak and lobster. So we offer three primary services. We offer investments. Contrary to what a lot of people think, they think we just do annuities, but we do a lot of annuity planning and income planning, but we also have an investment division. It's called Blueprint Wealth Management. It's a fiduciary, which is a big key word right now. You got to be a fiduciary. And we have investment advisors that are certified financial planners that run our Blueprint Wealth or investment arm, okay? And we use Fidelity as the custodian because it's one of the largest custodians in the world, pretty well-known name. So the money's custodied at Fidelity, never touches our hands. And we use very, very basic long-term passive strategies so we can keep your costs very low. I don't think anybody pays over 1%. I think our fees start at 0.95 and lower depending on your objectives. We're doing a lot of cash management for retirees. What is cash management? Well, you know, for 17 years, nobody made any interest. And now all of a sudden, banks are paying interest again. People say, well, you know, we were paying some interest. I used to tell people, listen, if your interest rate starts with a decimal point, that's zero. If it starts with a decimal point, it's zero. And so our investment arm does a lot of cash management. I know one of the funds that we use and do not charge $1 for is our money market. So we have Blueprint Wealth, which is a fiduciary, has a bunch of different models for IRA type assets. We have different models for non-IRA assets. The point I want to make there is that it's fee-based. So when our advisors give you advice, it is always in your best interest because it's a fee-based structure. There's no commission. That's what fiduciary means. There's no commission. We also have a tax division. We started that in 2010, 11 as well. We think taxes are the name of the game. You're about to hear me talk about it here in a minute. Tax planning is super important, and I think almost nobody does any. Like, I had a hard time finding CPAs that would do tax planning for me. As I started becoming more successful, all they ever do is tell me what I did wrong last year and how much I owed for it this year. And I said, well, what can I do next year to pay less or to mitigate it? They go, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see till we get till next year. And like tax preparation became like this history class that I would go to every year, but it was like the same lesson over and over again. Yeah, you owe taxes for this, you owe taxes for that, because of all the things you did last year or didn't do. And so we started a tax division with the idea that we're going to do tax planning. And there's a big difference between tax planning and tax preparation. You need both. You need both. But tax planning is like, hey, what if taxes go up in the future? Off chance. Off chance. National debt just just about to hit $35 trillion. It's doubled in 4.5 years. On the off chance that they raise taxes, regardless of who gets in there, they raise taxes. Are you going to be in a stronger position when that happens, or are you going to be in a weaker position? Are you doing planning now while we are enjoying the lowest tax rates we've ever had historically? And we are. These are the lowest they've ever been. It doesn't feel that way because it's still taxes. But these are the lowest they've ever been. So we have a tax division, and we like to work with our tax division on all of the investment strategies that our investment team utilizes. And then, of course, we have our Parity Life and Annuity division, which is income planning. Income planning right now is like out of this world, okay? It's almost like very hard for me to believe it, but every single Monday I check the rates, and income annuities and income strategies, they keep going up. I'll give you one example, and then I'm going to get into my talk, but I think it's worth noting. When it comes to fixed indexed annuities, or what I like to refer to as modern annuities and riders, you have to throw away everything you ever heard about them, because the payments are like 100% higher than they were even a year ago. And a year ago, they were as high as they were for 17 years in a row. So if you've ever read that annuities were bad for the last 15 to 17 years, yeah, maybe, but not now. Think of it this way. How many people in here got a mortgage when they bought their house because interest rates were like 3%? I mean, 3% was like, you had to. It was 3%. If you get that same mortgage today, it's like 8%. Okay, now think about an annuity. Annuity for like 15 years was like your mortgage at 3%. It was paying about 5% income. Today, 8, 9, 10% distributions are not, they're like everywhere. You could pick like 20 companies that'll pay you 8 to 10% if you want income right away. And if you want income in 2 or 3 years, it just keeps going up. And so it's been the best, literally the best rates I've ever seen, and it's not even really close. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So when you're picking a team to help you with your retirement moving forward, they better have an investment division, they better have a tax division, and they absolutely better be fond of annuities in some way, shape, or form, because they're paying double what they ever paid. And if you don't have some of it, just even this much of it right now, I think you're going to be kicking yourselves in the future, because it went up like within 9 months. Why do we have a mountain on our logo? Why do we talk about the retirement mountain as often as we do? Because back in 2008, right before the market crashed, July of 2008, I spent the summer with my brother who lived in Boulder, Colorado. And he wanted to take me on this hike, right? He says, we got to go on a hike. We're going to do Long's Peak, my younger brother, 8 years younger than me. Professional rock climber, like world-class rock climber, the top rope stuff, like the crazy stuff, okay, that I would never do. He wanted to do this hike. So I said, all right, I'll do this hike. I trained. I ate all the right foods. I went to the gym every day. Who wants to get shown up by their kid brother? So I'm working out every day. I'm eating right. I'm doing the treadmill. I'm getting that incline as high as I can get it. And the day finally comes. I feel ready to go. We start at midnight. And here's how out of it I was. I never even asked him why we started at midnight. I never even asked him. He goes, we got to start at midnight. I'll pick you up 11:30. Picked me up at 11:30. We got to the base of Long's Peak in Colorado, just outside of Estes Park. And we started this hike, 7.5 miles. 7.5 miles, like just, zigzags back and forth, back and forth up. We didn't get to the top of this mountain until 11:30 in the morning. We started at midnight, 7.5 miles. Just one step on top of the other, just climbing and climbing and climbing. When are we going to get there? The sun rises below you, by the way. When you're on a mountain like that, the sun actually rises below you. That was pretty cool. Everything else was like, okay. But that part was really cool. We get to the summit. And there's people all excited. They're on the top of this summit, and it's like some sketchy parts, but for the most part, nothing dangerous about the hike. Just long, hike. And you're going up 14,000 feet, so altitude's a big thing, as I knew it would be. We get to the top of this thing, there's not a cloud in the sky. I mean, it is the most stunning view I have ever seen in my life. I couldn't believe where I was. And we sit down for, what I think is going to be lunch. And within 1 minute, he's already pouncing down the other side of the mountain, like he wants to go back down. And so I'm like, hey, wait, and he's gone. So now I'm picking everything up, and now I'm a couple words for him, I'm talking to myself like I do so often, but I'm talking to myself about him, and we're starting to hike down this mountain. 2 hours we hike down this mountain. I finally catch up to him, and he's all chilled out. He's relaxing. He's at this little plateau. And, the mountaintop's right up there with the view. We're not in any kind of view. And I said, what the heck's the rush? Like, what's this all about? I got up at 11:30 at night to do this hike. I'm at the top of this mountain for like 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. We looked up at the mountain together, and there was no sunshine anymore. The sun had vanished. It was black skies, not just like dark skies, but black skies with lightning bolts going through it. And what he knew that I didn't know was that every day at noon to 2 o'clock, that summit acts like a magnet to attract electrical storms every day. Now, I would have never known that risk. I would have had no idea, because the only thing I thought about was how to get up the mountain, right? I spent the next 7.5 miles trying to figure out how I had screwed up not training how to use different muscles climbing down the mountain, okay? Opposite muscles, opposite risks. But I had no idea. I would have never thought about the weather that day, not even for a minute, not for 1 second. But I was with somebody that had been there before, and he knew the risks. I said, how'd you know? He said, because last year I was top climbing the face of this mountain, and we got caught in a lightning storm, and we didn't think we were going to make it. Like, he got stuck in a storm for 3 hours. The rest of the hike down, new appreciation for my kid brother. Very thankful that I was with somebody with his expertise who had already been there and done that. And number 3, I thought it's not all that different from what I do for a living, right? You spend your entire life trying to achieve a certain goal, one step in front of the other, overcoming all the challenges that you overcome in life and that are thrown your way with family and friends and careers and lost careers and paying bills and will I have enough? And then you finally get to retirement and it's all blue skies. For how long? Hopefully forever. But you got to find a way to navigate the risks now that you've reached the summit. And so that's what we do. We recreated, rebranded, did everything differently, and that's how we start most of our presentations, because now that you've reached the top of the retirement mountain, do you have a clear picture or strategy for how to navigate the risks associated with being retired? Because they're different. When you're climbing the mountain, you're saving 2 weeks at a time. When you're already at the summit or trying to navigate your way down, you have this big lump of money and lifestyle that you have accumulated. If you slip and fall on the way down, you can fall all the way down. The mistakes you make are bigger, have a bigger impact, and you got to have somebody that's already been there and done that and understands those risks. And I'll tell you, the risks in retirement are completely different from the risks that your kids and grandkids have. They are completely different. I'm going to show you that tonight. You have to have a strategy to get through retirement and navigate the risks that we're going to talk through here in a minute. So we're going to go through some of these retirement risks, and I'm going to talk to you about the ones that I notice here in the villages. And I really have to preface this by saying, most of the people that I talk to in here enjoy waking up in the morning and watching the news. Like they like it. Some people, most people, right? How many people get up, you turn on the news? So I see a few people saying no, but I know for a fact that one of you in the house watches the news. And I can tell what channel you watch in the first 30 seconds of our conversation, by the way. And I think it's generally a bad idea to watch Fox News and drink coffee at the same time. Generally. Shouldn't do both of them, one or the other. They're not talking to you. Nobody's talking to retirees. No financial experts are talking to retirees. They're talking about your grandkids. People are in debt. People aren't saving. The saving rate's down. People are going to retire. They won't have enough. They won't have enough. They won't have enough. How many people hear that every day? Do you think that applies to anybody that lives here? No, it doesn't apply to you. You have a much bigger risk of underspending in retirement. I've only been here 25 years. Okay, so I'm only drawing on the 25 years that I know about. Okay, I moved here. There were 14,000 people that lived in the villages when I moved here. Okay, and I thought that was utopia. I was like, I can't believe they brought me a community with 14,000 people. This is amazing. And it's sunny every day. This is amazing. And then I started meeting with people. The most conservative people I've ever met in my life. Not just like, with their core principles, but financially conservative, almost everybody. That's why it was so stunning to me that the villages went from 14,000 to 55,000 in like 6 years. I'm like, how did they get these people that don't like to spend money on anything to come here, give them trick money so they can spend it at Katie Bell's or wherever else, give them this fake money, the lifestyle package, and 3 days later they buy a house? They're too conservative to buy a house, but they did it. How many people fell for that trick? Thank you, by the way. I'm so glad they had that trick. It's worked out well for me too. But that is like one of the most difficult decisions people make, but people have made it and so quickly to come here. But after that, people get very, very conservative with how they spend their money. And so here's what I'll tell people. Actually, let me ask the question. How many people, because you're underspending, I guarantee it. I mean, I can't remember the last time I met somebody that was overspending and I said, hey, you better dial it back. Like, you're probably going to run out. Okay? I don't see that very often. And I'm being very forthright right now. I don't see it in my office often where I go, hey, if you don't dial this back, you're going to run out at 78. I just don't see it. But if you watch the news, they tell you everybody's going to run out, right? Nobody's got enough. Nobody's going to make it. They won't be able to retire. They're going to have to work till they're 75. They're not talking to you, and that's the only news channel you're watching. It doesn't apply to you. You're underspending. So here's the question. How many people in here, every day, you wake up and you start thinking of new ways. You get together, if you're married, you get together with your spouse, and you guys agree, every day we're going to get together. We're going to think of new ways to go without doing fun things. So that when we die, we can leave more money to our kids. Like, I want to find new ways to go without doing fun things. Almost nobody I talk to wants to leave a bunch of money to their kids. Almost nobody. And everybody I talk to has a financial strategy that is 100% guaranteed to leave extra money to their kids, and they don't even want to. It's a fact. Or, I'll meet a couple that's a little bit different. That's one version of underspending. The other one is like trying to find out why. Why are so many people underspending? Why are so many people that have accumulated reasonable wealth that could be out doing and enjoying and traveling and making memories with their family, lasting memories? Why aren't they traveling? It's because you spent your whole life, I think, this is my takeaway, I don't put words in anybody's mouth. Most of the people that are underspending grew up in a household where their folks grew up in a tough time. They grew up in the Depression era or very close to it. Close enough to where you heard about it. How many people? Yeah. Well, listen, if you grow up in an era named after Depression, you're going to have a tough time spending money too. And so what do? You start saving every 2 weeks. You start saving just in case. You start saving for a rainy day. You start saving and saving and saving, and then it becomes habit, right? We start saving and saving and saving and saving. Good habits are healthy. Good habits are healthy until it becomes unhealthy, meaning you've already saved enough. What do you want to do with it now? Because a lot of people, by underspending, are actually going to end up overpaying the government depending where you saved it. And so I'm going to talk to you about taxes in a minute, but how many people in here know somebody, maybe not in your house, but they know somebody that has a tough time spending money on themselves? Like, you'd be okay with it, a little extra, but the person in your house is like, they're not as open to it as you are, right? Like, they have a harder time spending money than you. Anybody relate to that at all? Well, you don't point them out. Don't point at them. I'm just talking like high level here. This is like, the man has a walker. You don't have to beat him up by pointing right at him. Sometimes people have a tough time spending money because it's hard when you've been saving it for 30, 40 years, right? And so most of the people I talk to don't have a strategy in place for distribution. They don't have a strategy in place to mitigate their taxes in retirement. And so I try to figure out, why aren't people spending more money? Well, number one, you've never spent money. You never had to dip into your IRA to make a car payment when you were 45 years old. You never dipped into your savings account to buy groceries or pay an electric bill on a regular basis when you were working and you were building your retirement assets, right? You never had to draw from savings. In fact, that was the thing you didn't touch. So how could you expect, you work for a company for 30 years, they give you a rollover packet with all the benefits in it, they give that to you and they say, okay, go out there and figure out how to make income with it. Make sure you figure out how to get health insurance with it and figure out how to mitigate all these risks that seem to be popping up every day in retirement. We are doing it backwards in America, and the happiest people that we talk to are people that have pensions. Yeah. Think about it. Who are the happiest people you know? They're the ones with pensions. And who are the most unhappy people? They're complaining about the market every day. They're complaining about politics every day. They're complaining about literally every single thing every day. They're worried. They're unhappy. They got all this money, but they have no income. And so I will tell you, one of the secrets to being happy in retirement is build an income plan. I know it's on one of these slides, but build an income plan, have it in writing, and make sure it's guaranteed. And there's never been a better time to do it than right now. Okay, so we start with income first. Then we tackle taxes. And it's hard to talk about taxes and not include IRAs in the discussion. And here's what I've learned about taxes. People don't like to spend money from their IRAs. They don't like to take money out of their IRAs. Why do they not like to take money out of their IRAs? Because you have to pay taxes. Yeah. So let me get this straight. In 1980, 81, 82, most corporations switched from pensions to these fancy savings accounts called 401ks. You put some money in, they put some money in, and the idea was that was going to be your retirement income. So you finally get to retirement, and you don't want to spend it because you have to pay taxes. Is that right? Most people don't understand taxes, is what I've learned. So let me walk you through a little scenario. You tell me if this sounds like you. I created just a little analogy here to help people understand taxes. It's the only way I know how to do it. I've been doing the same basic conceptual presentation since 2007. So I should be better at it than I am. But I've been doing this since 2007 because I found out nobody understood taxes. They all thought they were paying way more. And I'm going to do a little test here in a minute to prove that everybody thinks they're paying more than they are. Okay? Unless you're a CPA. Who's a CPA in the room? Put your hand up. It's okay. Yes? Okay. Who else? There's only one? I don't believe that's true. All right. Very close to CPA. How many engineers in the room? Okay. You're basically a CPA. You're basically a CPA. All right, so you guys can't answer the question. None of you had your hands up. Can't answer the question I'm going to ask in a couple minutes, okay? First thing we have to do when you come in to see us is we have to identify what kind of assets you have. You can have these, you can have these, or you can have those. And I color-coded it to make it really easy. So when you leave here, there should be no confusion around these colors. Because these over here are what color? Red. And the ones behind me are? Yellow. And those are? Green. Hey, we already won. We're already winning. In 1980, well, 1974 really, the government came out with this new savings plan. And the way the savings plan worked was at tax season, you'd go see your accountant, and he'd say, hey, you know, if you buy $2,000 of these red seeds, and you plant the seeds into some sort of investment, you get a tax deduction on the seeds. And then, when the seeds grow, they'll take root and they'll start to grow into these retirement trees. You don't pay any taxes on the growth either. It's tax deferred. You can't touch it till you're 59 and a half. You have to start taking it out back then at 70 and a half. But what's so good about this is it's going to grow tax deferred until later, which is good because later, when you get to retirement, you'll all be in a much lower tax bracket. These are called IRAs. And as you can see, I use trees because I'm going to use retirement crops for this discussion. I didn't talk about any type of investment, CD, bond, stock, none of that stuff. We're just going to grow some trees here for a minute. Okay? We're going to build a retirement crop. We're going to live off the harvest when we get there. I just introduced the IRA, which came out in 1974. 1980, the very first one that looks like this. Tell me if this is familiar. Hey, every 2 weeks, we're going to let you deduct some seeds from your paycheck automatically, and then we're going to match some of those. We're going to match some of those seeds. So you get a tax deduction on the seeds, and then the company matching, they get a deduction on the seeds. So nobody's paid any taxes on the seeds, and then it's going to go into these crops. We're going to plant them. We're going to nurture them. They're going to grow into these red trees. And that's really good because you don't pay any taxes on the growth until you get to retirement. And that's good because once you get to retirement, you'll all be in a much lower tax bracket. Okay, and then maybe you work for a 457, a government company that had 457 plans or thrift savings plan or 403Bs, teachers, whatever it is. If your money is tax deferred, it's in the red, okay? And here's what happens. Nobody wants to take the money out because when you take the money out, you got to pay income tax on it. It's like the only thing that's taxed at ordinary income tax rates guaranteed every time, right? And so you got, let's say you got 3 trees up there. Most people, you need 20 grand for something. Emergency comes up. Are you going to go to the red trees to take that out? And everybody's shaking their head no. I haven't even talked about the other trees. You're already shaking your head no. Why won't you take the $20,000 out of the red trees? Isn't that what it was saved for? No. We can't. Because if we touch it, we have to do what? Pay taxes. Yes. And it makes all your other income go up, which means you may end up having to pay extra taxes on Medicare. They call it IRMA, and actually you're not even allowed to call it a tax. It's a surcharge. But I feel like if you take it out and it puts you over a certain limit and you got to pay more for it, it's a tax. So I might be breaking some rules by calling it a tax, but you got to pay extra for Part B, Part D, not Part B, Part D. You got to, B and D. And so if your income is too high, you pay extra for Medicare. So nobody wants to touch those red trees. You might have to pay what I call stealth taxes. Okay. But do you know how low our taxes are right now? Anybody in here go, hey, our taxes are super low right now? How many people go, hey, listen, taxes are so low, I can't believe how low they are. This is wonderful. Very few people. Did you know that an average retirement couple that had, say, $5,000 a month coming in for Social Security and $5,000 a month that they took out of IRAs or IRAs plus pension, so $10,000 a month, okay? Do you know what their taxes would be at the end of the year if they're over 65? $120,000 a year. I'll give 3 guesses to anyone not an engineer or CPA. Dollar amount. How much do you got to write for a check? 120,000. 15? 12? You got a blue shirt on with my logo. 20,000? Yeah. It's around 7,000. It's around 7,000. Say it out loud. It's cheap. Of course it's cheap. Taxes in 1980, if you made more than 100 grand a year, was 50%. 50. They just lowered it again this year. You can make $120,000 a year and pay around 7 grand, 8 grand if half of it's coming from Social Security and half of it's coming from pensions and IRAs. Do you have an income plan, guys? You got to be taking advantage of this right now. Do you think it's going to last? I did a seminar 4 years ago. I just watched it on video the other day. The couple made $96,000 a year. Their taxes were 10% on 96. Today you can make 120 and pay 7 grand. Taxes are going down every single year, and we're complaining about it every single year. So what's your exit strategy? Nobody has one. I'm going to break down case studies to show you how you can do this. Do you know what happens to this crop if you don't start spending it? Let's say you saved it all these years, right? And your number one goal was to get to retirement so that you could live off of it, but then you got there and you go, I don't want to pay those taxes, and then something happens. Your wife or your husband passes away, and then let's just say you can't live one single day without them. Like they pass away and then you're just heartbroken. That's it. One day, you can't live another day because they're gone. So you inherit the IRA, you only had it for one day, then you pass away, it goes to the kids. What do you think happens to the IRA? No, well, they're going to spend it, but not yet. Yeah, well, they're not going to, yeah. How many of your kids are going to inherit the same problem spending money that you have? That goes to the government, minimum. That's what the kids get. Okay? So if your money's in the red, it means you don't know how much of it's yours until you start taking it out. But I guarantee you this, if you build a good income strategy, you'll never pay as much taxes while you're living as you will when you're dead. And here's like a new thing you should maybe think about. You'll have more fun with it while you're living. So the money in the red is where we start because it's tax-deferred money, and it's not like you can keep it in there forever. And by the way, this is just the income tax. The bigger the IRA, the bigger the problem, but everybody pays income tax. Everybody has to pay income tax. People confuse dying and taxes with death taxes. That's not what I'm talking about right here. I'm talking about IRAs that have to come out when you die, and they go to your kids. A third of it's going to the government, at least a third, and that's at today's rates, which I just told you are the lowest they've ever been. Okay? So we know that at least one tree is not yours, even if you had 3 of them. But most of you are pretty diversified. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. You didn't put all your retirement in one type of seed. So we have yellow trees. These are a little bit different. You pay taxes on the seeds. Okay? And when you plant the trees, they start to grow. You pay taxes on the growth. And then every year it grows, you pay taxes on the growth. And every year it grows, you pay, like a bank CD. Okay, and so what are these green trees all about? You pay taxes on the seeds one time. Pay taxes on the seeds one time, and you get the crop for free. Not deferred, for free. So you pay taxes on the seeds, you get all the growth. It starts to grow and take root. You don't pay any taxes on it while it's growing. You want to take income out of it? Take income out of it. That's tax-free too. So you can take out as much as you want. And here's the best part. You can die when you want to because all 3 trees will go to the kids. They get it tax-free too. So all you have to do is pay taxes on the seeds, but here's the problem. Most of you, when you were working, you made too much money to buy a bunch of these Roth IRAs, right? Don't worry, the government helped you with that too. In 2011, they came out with a program that said you can convert your red trees to green trees. So you could take one red tree, okay, let's say they're 100,000, just so my head doesn't completely explode. $100,000 tree, add it to your other income, because this is all taxable, right? We all agree IRAs are taxable? Okay, and you could convert it to a Roth. Now we're going to make some assumptions so that we can make this real simple. Let's say it cost you $20,000 to convert this tree. And then you converted it to a Roth, and let's say you had no other money to pay the taxes. What is the starting value of the Roth? $80,000. So you just took a $100,000 red tree and you traded it for an $80,000 green tree. Well, that's why nobody does these. Because in our minds we thought we had 100. But how much did you really have? You really only have the 80. So now it's over here, you put in 80. And let's say you were real smart, you bought that NVIDIA again. And that 80 turned into 2 trees. Come over here. Turned into 2 trees. Now it's worth 160,000. And you want to take it all out. You can take it all out tax-free. You can leave it to your kids tax-free. You can start taking a stream of income or annual distributions from it tax-free. You never have to pay income tax on a Roth IRA again once you pay the income tax on it. But nobody wants to pay the 20 grand. So you know what I learned? Stop asking people to pay taxes on the whole tree. If you're in the 12% bracket, let's go to the top. If you're in the 22% bracket, let's pay taxes on this much tree and we'll convert a little bit and we'll start to convert meaningful amounts that don't impact your taxes. Pay taxes on the leaves, pay taxes on whatever. Convert whatever you can to Roth because you never have to pay income tax on it again. And that's very, very important planning. It takes time to do that planning. And by the way, it's very, not fun to tell people to pay taxes either. It's not quite like going to the dentist, but it's right there, right? You don't enjoy it, but you feel better after usually. You have to start thinking about what's my accelerated distribution strategy over the next 2 years. Because in 2026, taxes change for everybody. And they're the lowest they've ever been. So all I will ask you today is, do you have an exit strategy for your IRAs? Do you have a team that you will work with that covers taxes, annuities and insurance, investments, and they all work together in the same room on your plan? Because if you don't have a team that covers all of it, I don't know how you have a secure financial strategy that covers all of the retirement risks. Are you top heavy in the red? If you're top heavy in the red, we need to start a distribution strategy. Okay? By the way, I'm not advocating that you save more money in the green. I would prefer you spend it on you. But I know that most of you don't know how to do that. Or you're married to someone that doesn't know how to do that. So here's a tip. Here's a tip. Here's a tip. If you have someone at home that has a hard time spending money, tell them it's cheaper. Tell them it's cheaper to spend it than it is to leave it, because it is. Okay? They understand cheaper, right? We all understand cheaper. It is actually cheaper for you to start taking distributions from your IRAs right now. And if you can't spend it, like you really can't, you get to do all the fun things you love doing, and there's money left over, we'll convert it over here to green. Because green trees are 100%, you've paid your tax burden already. You've already paid your tax bill. It's tax-free forever. Okay? So we want to have a strategy for you that gets the money out of the red. Our first choice is to get it into your pocket and start creating that lifestyle you wanted. I probably have this on one of these things. We want you to enjoy the money. We want you to enjoy what you worked so hard for when you were climbing the mountain. We want you to enjoy it because right now you can have, listen, if you want to leave money to the kids, I'll help you do that. There are way smarter ways to leave money to the kids than to leave your own money. We'll do some life insurance planning. But if you don't want to do that, why are you saving it for them and the government? It's not what you were thinking about when you were accumulating it, I guarantee it. And so you got to have a plan. Oh yeah, the widow's tax penalty. So when you lose a spouse, two things happen. One, you lose one. So these are all the case studies that we talk about at the Learning Lounge next week. But in general, when you lose a spouse, two things will happen. The guaranteed income will go down because we're going to lose one of the Social Security checks. You will lose some of a pension potentially. And your taxes will double. So you'll have less guaranteed income and your taxes will double. Because tax rates for single people are different than they are for married people. If you make $100,000 a year in retirement and you're single, you're considered rich. And you qualify for some of those IRMAA penalties we were talking about. If you make $100,000 and you're married, there's no IRMAA penalties, you don't make enough money. Makes no sense, right? $120,000 a year, married couple pays around $7,000 a year in tax. A single person, it's over $16,000 and change, almost $17,000 when you add in IRMAA. So it more than doubles if you're single. So listen, and that should say widow or widowers, but how many people in here learned this? Somebody learned this along the way. And let me tell you something, when you learn this, it's generally going to be at the hardest time that you're going through in your entire life. You just lost your best friend, your confidant, and maybe the person that handled all this stuff. I don't know. But it's pretty tough to do the planning afterwards. You got to be a little bit more creative. We just need to be practical about it. You need to have investments that are invested for capital growth based on your risk tolerance. You need to have cash management. You need to have tax planning. And you need to explore some of these types of strategies because taxes are the lowest they've ever been and our deficit's doubled in 5 years. So when are we going to pay for this? Who do you think is going to pay for it? Don't even answer. When's the last time your grandkids called you and they said, you won't believe it, I just got invited to a free dinner seminar and they're going to buy me steak and lobster. Nobody's doing seminars for your kids and nobody's doing seminars for your grandkids. Do you know why? They don't have any money. Who do you think is going to pay the taxes? The people with the money. You know how short your window is, like all of us, for our time where we get to do, your next 10 years are your best 10 years. Right on the bottom. Your next 10 years are your best 10 years. If you do not have an income strategy designed to maximize your next 10 years, what are we doing? Are we just saving it? Nobody gets healthier, stronger, and more energetic. I mean, how many things can go wrong in 10 years? I love this one. Oh, in 3 years, we're going on a big trip. We're going to celebrate our 50th. I go, in 3 years, maybe. I don't know. Your 50th? Why aren't you celebrating your 47th? Your 47 and a half? Your 48th? Why aren't you why aren't you doing it now? COVID shut down everything for 2 years. Are you saving it for COVID 28? I'm only half joking. And I'm not trying to put a miserable end to what I think has been a pretty productive talk. But geez, how many people in here see friends, like one day they were fine, and then 3, 4, 5 months later, they're not fine anymore. And guess what? When one spouse gets sick, you both get sick. I have never, ever seen a healthy couple, like had a good relationship. Husband gets sick, but I've been picking on the husband a lot. The husband gets sick, and the wife is like on some worldwide cruise in Holland checking out the tulips. I've just never seen it. I've never seen it. Because when one spouse gets sick, don't we both hurt? Yeah. So when one spouse gets sick, you both get sick. And I think it's very, very important that you, when that happens, there are no regrets. None. Because it will happen eventually. I don't want any regrets. So I feel like my mission is to beat it into you that you're underspending in retirement. Taxes are the cheapest they've ever been, so that's not a good excuse not to spend anymore. It's going to cost more money to leave it to your kids if you die with it, and you don't even want to do that. We agree to that. They're going to spend it. They will enjoy it. And you worked your butts off to get here, the mecca of retirement. The greatest retirement community in the world, the best planners and savers that I know. And so many people are missing it. Just a little bit, because they're still doing the same financial planning that they did when they were climbing the mountain. They can't pivot to addressing the risks now that they've made it to where they can start enjoying it. And it's never been better than it is right now. Listen, we're a no pressure group. I'm just going to teach you some case studies. I'm going to teach you like how you can use different types of products and strategies with tiny fractions of your portfolio. I'm going to show you some tax favored strategies on how to manage cash. There are ways to pay less income tax on your cash and still be safe and still earn interest. We're going to talk through, show you examples of case studies of an income plan. You should all have a written income plan. Besides my clients, how many people have a written income plan? Besides my clients, you know exactly how much you can take every single year forever, and it's adjusted for inflation. Only a couple hands went up. Let's build one. They're easy to build right now. You can crush it right now, and you can go back to saving all the money you won't spend anyway. I'll give you more income, and you can figure out how to save it again.